In the heart of San Francisco, where skyscrapers pierced the clouds and tech companies reigned supreme, there lived a young man named Ethan Carter. Ethan wasn't like the other kids his age who spent their days glued to video games or scrolling through social media. From an early age, he had a spark in his eyes, a deep curiosity about how things worked. Whether it was taking apart an old radio or figuring out why the toaster stopped working, Ethan's mind was always buzzing with questions and ideas. Ethan's family wasn't wealthy. His mother, Maria Carter, worked long hours as a cleaner at Innovatech Industries, one of the biggest technology firms in Silicon Valley. Despite their modest lifestyle, Maria did everything she could to support her son. She often told him stories about how smart he was, encouraging him to dream big even if they didn't have much money. "You've got a gift, Ethan," she would say with pride. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." But life wasn't easy for Ethan. With no access to expensive schools or fancy gadgets, he relied on creativity and determination to learn. He spent countless hours watching videos online, teaching himself the basics of engineering and electronics. Whenever Maria brought home broken appliances or discarded items from work, Ethan saw them as treasures waiting to be fixed. To him, every broken clock or malfunctioning toy was a puzzle begging to be solved. And solve them he did, often surprising his mother with his ingenuity. Maria loved seeing her son so passionate, but sometimes she worried about his future. The world outside their small apartment was harsh, especially for someone without connections or resources. Still, she held on to hope that Ethan's brilliance would someday shine bright enough for others to notice. One evening, after finishing another repair project, a vintage lamp he'd found in a dumpster, Ethan decided to visit his mom at work. It wasn't unusual for him to tag along after school. Maria liked having him close, and Ethan enjoyed exploring the vast halls of Innovatech. Even though he wasn't allowed into certain areas, just being near all the cutting-edge technology fueled his imagination. He dreamed of one day creating something incredible, something that could change the world. That night, however, fate had something unexpected in store. While wandering around the building, waiting for his mom to finish her shift, Ethan stumbled upon a door slightly ajar. Inside, he saw rows of desks covered with blueprints, half-built devices, and tools scattered everywhere. At the center of the room stood a sleek, futuristic-looking machine mounted on a stand. It looked like nothing Ethan had ever seen before, a drone unlike any ordinary aircraft. Its design was intricate, with shiny metallic panels and glowing lights embedded into its frame. A sign nearby labeled it as Project Starlight, classified. Curiosity bubbled inside Ethan. He knew he shouldn't go in, it was clearly off limits, but the allure of the mysterious prototype was too strong to resist. Carefully stepping inside, he approached the device, his heart racing with excitement. Up close, he noticed tiny wires snaking around the internal components, some of which seemed loose or improperly connected. Being the problem solver he was, Ethan couldn't help but examine it further. He spotted a small toolkit resting on a nearby table, likely left behind by one of the engineers. Without thinking twice, Ethan picked up a screwdriver and tightened a few screws, ensuring the connections were secure. In his mind, this wasn't sabotage or mischief. It was simply helping. After all, if something was broken, why wouldn't you fix it? Satisfied with his work, Ethan stepped back to admire the now perfectly assembled prototype. Little did he know his innocent act of tinkering would set off a chain reaction that would alter his life forever. Unbeknownst to Ethan, hidden cameras recorded every movement within the lab. When CEO Richard Langley reviewed the security footage later that evening, his blood boiled. There, on the screen, was a teenager touching and worse, altering one of the company's most valuable projects. Project Starlight represented years of research and millions of dollars in investment. It was supposed to revolutionize space, exploration, and here was some kid meddling with it like it was a toy. Langley immediately called for an investigation. By the time Maria arrived at his office the next morning, summoned under urgent circumstances, she already sensed trouble. Her hands trembled as she clutched her cleaning cart, dreading what might come next. Sure enough, Langley wasted no time laying into her. Your son tampered with classified property, he barked, slamming a folder onto his desk. Do you realize the damage he could have caused? Maria tried to explain, her voice shaking. Ethan doesn't mean harm, sir. He's just curious. He loves machines. He probably thought he was helping. But Langley wasn't listening. To him, Ethan was either reckless or dangerous, and keeping Maria employed posed too great a risk. Without compassion or hesitation, he fired her on the spot, ordering her to ensure Ethan stayed far away from Innovatech in the future. When Maria returned home that evening, tears streamed down her face as she broke the news to Ethan. Hearing about her termination crushed him. Guilt weighed heavily on his shoulders. All he'd wanted to do was fix something. He never imagined it would cost his mom her job. Yet, despite the pain, a part of Ethan refused to believe he'd done anything wrong. Deep down, he knew he'd acted out of instinct, driven by a desire to make things better. As the days passed, Ethan struggled to shake off the weight of what happened. He avoided leaving the house, fearing judgment from neighbors or classmates. Meanwhile, Maria took odd jobs wherever she could find them, determined to keep food on the table. Though angry and frustrated, she reminded Ethan constantly that none of this was his fault. We'll get through this, she assured him, hugging him tightly. You're going to do amazing things, Ethan. I know it. Though neither of them realized it yet, those words would soon prove truer than they could have imagined. While Ethan's actions may have cost him dearly in the short term, they were about to open doors he never dreamed possible. Ethan couldn't stop thinking about what had happened at Innovatech. Every time he closed his eyes, he replayed the moment when he tightened that loose connection on the prototype. He kept telling himself that he hadn't done anything wrong, that he'd only fixed something that was broken. But no matter how many times he tried to convince himself, the guilt lingered. His mom had lost her job because of him, and now their already difficult life was becoming even harder. Maria did her best to stay strong for Ethan. She worked odd jobs during the day, cleaning houses, running errands, or helping neighbors with chores. But it wasn't enough to cover all their expenses. Money was tight, and they often had to skip meals or stretch leftovers to make ends meet. Despite everything, Maria never blamed Ethan. Instead, she encouraged him to keep pursuing his passion for inventing and problem-solving. You have a gift, she would remind him. Don't let this one mistake define you. But Ethan struggled to focus. The joy he once felt while tinkering with gadgets had faded, replaced by frustration and self-doubt. He spent most of his days cooped up in their tiny apartment, staring at half-finished projects scattered across his desk. A broken radio sat untouched in the corner, its wires exposed but unmended. For the first time in his life, Ethan didn't feel inspired. All he could think about was how his curiosity had ruined things for his family. One evening, as Ethan sat, alone in his room trying to distract himself by sketching designs for a new invention, the phone rang. It was unusual for anyone to call them, especially at that hour. Curious, Ethan picked up the receiver. On the other end was a woman with a warm, confident voice. "Hello, is this Ethan Carter?" she asked. "Yes, this is Ethan," he replied, hesitantly, unsure who might be calling him. "My name is Dr. Emily Torres," the woman continued. "I work at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. I came across your, shall we say, interaction with a certain prototype recently, and I wanted to speak with you about it." Ethan froze. His heart began racing as panic set in. Was this another person coming to scold him? Had someone reported him to NASA too? I don't understand, he stammered. "What do you mean?" Dr. Torres chuckled softly, sensing his nervousness. "Relax, Ethan. I'm not here to accuse you of anything. In fact, quite the opposite. We've been monitoring innovations across various industries, and when I saw footage of you working on that device, I was impressed. Very impressed." Ethan blinked in disbelief. "You were impressed?" "Yes," Dr. Torres said firmly. "From what I observed, you identified a critical flaw in the prototype's wiring and corrected it efficiently. That kind of skill doesn't come around every day. Tell me, Ethan, are you interested in science and engineering?" For a moment, Ethan forgot how to breathe. Someone thought he was talented? Someone actually believed in him? Slowly, he nodded before realizing she couldn't see him over the phone. "Yes, ma'am," he managed to say. "I love building and fixing things, I always have." "Good," Dr. Torres replied, "because I'd like to meet you in person. There's something important I want to discuss with you. Can you come to our lab tomorrow afternoon?" Ethan's mind raced. This had to be some sort of prank, right? Why would NASA, a place he'd only dreamed of being associated with, want to talk to someone like him? Still, he couldn't ignore the opportunity. Maybe this was his chance to prove himself, to show people that he wasn't just the troublemaker everyone made him out to be. After hanging up, Ethan told his mom about the call. At first, Maria was skeptical. "Are you sure this isn't a scam?" she asked cautiously. But Ethan insisted it was real. "She sounded serious, Mom. And she works at NASA. What if this is my chance to make things right?" Maria hesitated but eventually agreed. "All right, Ethan. If this is really happening, then you need to give it your best shot. Just promise me you'll be careful." The next day, Ethan dressed, in his cleanest clothes, a pair of jeans and a slightly worn-out button-up shirt, and headed to JPL. As he walked through the doors of the massive facility, he felt both excited and terrified. The building was filled with scientists, engineers, and researchers bustling about, discussing complex theories and testing cutting-edge equipment. Everywhere he looked, there were machines and gadgets far beyond anything he'd ever seen. Dr. Torres greeted him warmly, shaking his hand with a smile. "Welcome, Ethan. Thank you for coming." She led him into a small conference room where blueprints and diagrams covered the walls. "Let me get straight to the point," she began. "We're currently facing a challenge with one of our satellite components. It's malfunctioning and we haven't been able to pinpoint the issue. Based on what I've seen from you, I believe you might be able to help us solve it." Ethan's jaw dropped. Help NASA? Him? "But I'm not a scientist or an engineer," he protested. "I just fix things because I like figuring them out." "That's exactly why I called you," Dr. Torres said. "Sometimes, the best solutions come from fresh perspectives. You don't have years of formal training clouding your judgment. You see problems differently. So what do you say? Are you up for the challenge?" Ethan hesitated. The weight of the situation pressed down on him. If he failed, it wouldn't just reflect poorly on him. It could embarrass his mom even more. But if he succeeded, maybe, just maybe, he could change their lives forever. "I'll try," he said finally, determination creeping into his voice. "I'll do my best." Over the next few days, Ethan threw himself into the project. Dr. Torres provided him with access to tools, resources, and guidance whenever he needed it. At first, the complexity of the satellite component overwhelmed him. It was nothing like the simple gadgets he was used to repairing. But as he studied the schematics and examined the faulty part, patterns began to emerge. Slowly but surely, Ethan started piecing together a solution. Late one night, after hours of trial and error, Ethan discovered the root cause of the problem, a design flaw in the power distribution system that caused overheating under specific conditions. Not only did he identify the issue, but he also proposed a modification to improve efficiency. When he presented his findings to Dr. Torres and her team, they were astonished. "This is incredible, Ethan," Dr. Torres said, beaming with pride. "Your solution not only fixes the current issue but makes the component 15% more efficient. How did you figure this out?" Ethan shrugged modestly. "I just thought about how I'd fix something at home. Sometimes simpler ideas work better than complicated ones." Word of Ethan's achievement spread quickly throughout JPL. Scientists who had initially doubted him, questioning whether someone without formal education could contribute meaningfully, began to see him in a new light. They marveled at his ability to think outside the box and tackle problems with creativity and precision. Meanwhile, news of Ethan's involvement with NASA reached Innovatech. CEO Richard Langley stumbled upon an interview where Ethan humbly explained his journey, crediting his skills to self-teaching and hands-on experience. Watching the young man speak so confidently, Langley felt a pang of regret. He realized now that firing Ethan's mother may have been a hasty decision. But instead of confronting his mistake, Langley chose to dismiss it, convincing himself that protecting company secrets justified his actions. Back home, Maria watched her son transform before her eyes. The shy, uncertain boy who had doubted himself just weeks earlier was now standing tall, full of confidence and purpose. Though their financial struggles weren't entirely resolved, Ethan's success gave them hope for a brighter future. And yet, Ethan knew his journey was far from over. This was only the beginning of a path that promised challenges, triumphs, and opportunities beyond his wildest dreams. Ethan's days at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL, quickly became a whirlwind of excitement, challenges, and growth. At first, he felt out of place among the highly educated scientists and engineers who worked there. They spoke in technical jargon that often went over his head, discussing concepts like orbital mechanics, propulsion systems, and thermodynamics with ease. Ethan, on the other hand, had learned everything he knew from YouTube videos, old textbooks, and hands-on experimentation. The gap between his knowledge and theirs seemed vast, but instead of letting it discourage him, he used it as motivation to push harder. Dr. Emily Torres became both a mentor and a guide for Ethan during this time. She recognized his raw talent and encouraged him to trust his instincts. "You don't need a degree to think critically or solve problems," she told him one afternoon, while they reviewed blueprints together. "What you have is something many people lose as they grow older: curiosity. Hold on to that." Her words stuck with Ethan. He began approaching every task with renewed confidence, reminding himself that his unique perspective was valuable. While others relied on formulas and theories, Ethan focused on practical solutions. He asked questions no one else thought to ask and looked for answers in unconventional places. Slowly but surely, he earned the respect of his colleagues, even those who had initially doubted him. One day, Dr. Torres handed Ethan another challenge. This time, it wasn't just about fixing a malfunctioning component. It was about designing something entirely new. "We're working on a rover prototype for an upcoming Mars mission," she explained. "But we've hit a snag with its navigation system. It needs to be able to adapt to unpredictable terrain without human intervention. Can you help us figure out a solution?" Ethan's eyes lit up. Designing a rover sounded impossible at first glance, but the idea thrilled him. For weeks, he immersed himself in research, studying videos of previous Mars missions and analyzing data collected by earlier rovers. He even built a small-scale model using spare parts he found lying around the lab. Late nights turned into early mornings as he tested and retested his ideas, tweaking tiny details until everything worked perfectly. His breakthrough came when he noticed how insects moved across uneven surfaces. Ants, for example, could climb over rocks and navigate through tight spaces with remarkable agility. Inspired by nature, Ethan proposed equipping the rover with flexible legs instead of traditional wheels. These legs would allow the rover to adjust its height and balance depending on the terrain, making it far more versatile than any existing design. When Ethan presented his concept to the team, the room fell silent. For a moment, he feared they would dismiss his idea as too unconventional. But then, one of the senior engineers broke the silence. This is brilliant," the man said, leaning forward in his chair. "It's simple, yet effective. Why didn't we think of this before?" The praise filled Ethan with pride, but what truly mattered to him was knowing he had contributed something meaningful. His design not only solved the problem but also pushed the boundaries of what was possible. From that point on, Ethan became an integral part of the project, collaborating closely with the team to refine his invention. Together, they transformed his initial concept into a fully functional prototype, a rover capable of exploring Mars in ways no machine had done before. As word of Ethan's achievement spread, invitations poured in from all over the world. Universities wanted him to give lectures. Tech companies offered him internships and scholarships. Journalists clamored for interviews, eager to share his inspiring story with the public. Suddenly, Ethan Carter, the boy who once tinkered with broken appliances, in his tiny apartment was being hailed as a prodigy. Yet, despite the growing attention, Ethan remained humble. He never forgot where he came from or the struggles his family had endured. Whenever reporters asked about his success, he credited his mom for believing in him and thanked Dr. Torres for giving him a chance. "I'm not special because I'm smarter than anyone else," he often said. "I'm just lucky enough to have people who supported me when I needed it most." Meanwhile, back at Innovatech, CEO Richard Langley watched Ethan's rise with a mix of awe and unease. Clips of Ethan speaking confidently at press conferences and demonstrating his inventions dominated the news. Social media buzzed with admiration. For the young genius who had risen from humble beginnings to work alongside some of the brightest minds in science, Langley couldn't help but feel a twinge of regret every time he saw Ethan's face on TV. At first, Langley tried to brush off his guilt. After all, he had acted in the company's best interest, or so he told himself. But as public opinion began to shift, criticizing Innovatech for firing Maria and dismissing Ethan's potential, Langley realized he couldn't ignore the backlash forever. Articles popped up online questioning his leadership style, accusing him of stifling innovation and failing to recognize talent. Customers started boycotting Innovatech products, and investors grew nervous about the company's declining reputation. Desperate to salvage the situation, Langley decided to reach out to Ethan personally. He sent a formal letter inviting him to return to Innovatech, offering him a prestigious position as a junior engineer along with a generous salary. To sweeten the deal, he promised to reinstate Maria as well, claiming it was all part of a new initiative to support underrepresented talent. When Ethan received the letter, he read it aloud to his mom, who listened quietly, her expression unreadable. Once he finished, she asked simply, "What do you want to do?" Ethan didn't answer right away. Part of him felt tempted to accept the offer, not for the money or the title, but because it meant proving to Langley that he was wrong. Another part of him, however, remembered the pain and humiliation they had endured because of the man's arrogance. Innovatech had dismissed them without a second thought, treating them as expendable. Why should they forgive and forget so easily? After much deliberation, Ethan made his decision. He wrote a polite but firm response to Langley, declining the offer. In the letter, he thanked the CEO for reaching out but explained that he had no desire to return to a company that valued secrecy over collaboration and fear over trust. Instead, he expressed his intention to continue working at JPL, where he felt appreciated and inspired. Langley's reaction was predictable. Furious at being rejected, he lashed out at his staff, blaming them for not foreseeing the PR disaster. But deep down, he knew the fault lay with him. By underestimating Ethan and punishing Maria unjustly, he had cost Innovatech not only two valuable individuals, but also its credibility. For Ethan and Maria, life began to improve steadily. With Ethan's newfound fame came opportunities to secure financial stability. Maria found steady employment at a local community center, where she helped organize programs for children interested in science and technology. Ethan, meanwhile, continued to thrive at JPL, contributing groundbreaking ideas to projects that would shape the future of space exploration. Despite their success, neither Ethan nor Maria forgot the lessons they had learned along the way. They understood that adversity could either break you or make you stronger, and they chose to let it strengthen them. Their journey wasn't just about achieving personal goals. It was about proving that brilliance exists in unexpected places, and that determination can overcome even the toughest obstacles. And so, Ethan's story became a beacon of hope for countless others facing similar challenges. Young inventors, dreamers, and creators drew inspiration from his resilience, reminded that talent knows no boundaries, not wealth, not education, and certainly not privilege. Though his path had been fraught with setbacks, Ethan Carter emerged, not just as a genius but as a symbol of perseverance, proving that sometimes the greatest discoveries come from the unlikeliest sources. Ethan's life after his decision to decline Innovatech's offer was nothing short of transformative. With each passing day, he grew more confident in his abilities and more determined to make a difference, not just for himself, but for others, like him who had been overlooked or underestimated. His role at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL, expanded beyond fixing problems. He became a key player in designing innovative solutions that pushed the boundaries of space exploration. The young man who once tinkered with broken radios in his cluttered bedroom was now contributing to projects that could change humanity's understanding of the universe. One of Ethan's most ambitious undertakings came when JPL tasked him with developing a new type of communication system for deep space missions. Traditional systems relied on radio waves, which worked well within our solar system, but struggled over vast interstellar distances. Ethan's challenge was to create something faster, more reliable, and capable of transmitting data across light years. It was an enormous task, one that even seasoned scientists found daunting. But Ethan approached it with the same curiosity and creativity that had defined him since childhood. He spent countless hours brainstorming ideas, sketching designs, and testing prototypes. At first, progress was slow. Some experiments failed spectacularly, leaving behind charred circuits and shattered components. Frustration crept in, but Ethan refused to give up. Instead, he drew inspiration from unlikely sources, like how fireflies communicated through flashes of light, or how whales sent sound signals across oceans. These natural phenomena sparked an idea. What if they could use quantum entanglement to transmit information instantly, regardless of distance? The concept wasn't entirely new. It had been theorized by physicists for decades, but no one had successfully applied it to real-world technology. Ethan dove into research papers, consulted experts, and collaborated with quantum physicists to turn theory into reality. After months of trial and error, he and his team developed a prototype device dubbed Quantum Link. When tested, it performed flawlessly, sending messages between Earth-based stations as if they were mere inches apart instead of miles. The implications were staggering. With Quantum Link, future spacecraft could stay connected to mission control no matter how far they traveled, a game-changer for humanity's quest to explore the stars. News of Ethan's breakthrough spread quickly, earning him international acclaim. He appeared on talk shows, gave keynote speeches at conferences, and inspired millions with his story of perseverance and ingenuity. Yet, despite the fame, Ethan remained grounded. He never forgot the struggles he and his mom had endured, nor did he take credit for his success alone. In every interview, he emphasized the importance of teamwork and gratitude. "I didn't get here by myself," he often said. "My mom believed in me when no one else did, and people like Dr. Torres gave me opportunities I never dreamed possible. This isn't just my achievement, it belongs to everyone who supported me." While Ethan basked in the glow of his accomplishments, Richard Langley at Innovatech faced mounting pressure. The backlash against his handling of Ethan's case continued to grow, fueled by media coverage and public outrage. Articles criticized Langley's leadership style, calling him out for valuing corporate secrecy over human potential. Employees within Innovatech began questioning their own loyalty to the company, especially those who felt stifled by its rigid hierarchy. Morale plummeted, and productivity suffered. Langley tried to mitigate the damage by launching a PR campaign aimed at rehabilitating Innovatech's image. He announced initiatives to support diversity and innovation, promising scholarships for underprivileged students and partnerships with community organizations. However, critics dismissed these efforts as insincere, accusing Langley of trying to save face rather than addressing systemic issues within the company. Even some of Innovatech's longtime investors expressed concern, warning that the firm's tarnished reputation could jeopardize future projects. Desperate to regain control, Langley made another attempt to win back Ethan's favor. This time, he invited Maria to meet with him personally, hoping to appeal to her maternal instincts. "Mrs. Carter," he began during their awkward encounter in his office, "I want you to know how deeply sorry I am for my actions. Firing you was hasty. If there's anything I can do to make amends—" Maria cut him off mid-sentence, her voice calm but firm. "You don't need to apologize to me, Mr. Langley. Apologize to my son. He's the one you dismissed without giving him a chance. And frankly, your apology means little unless you're willing to change the way your company treats people." Her words struck a nerve. For the first time, Langley realized the depth of his mistakes, not just in firing Maria and dismissing Ethan, but in fostering a culture that prioritized profit over people. Though he couldn't undo the past, he vowed to start making changes, beginning with promoting employees based on merit rather than connections and creating programs to nurture untapped talent. Back at home, Ethan and Maria celebrated their hard-earned victories quietly. They rented a modest apartment closer to JPL, allowing Ethan to spend less time commuting and more time working on his projects. Maria took pride in watching her son thrive, knowing she had played a crucial role in shaping the person he had become. Together, they rebuilt their lives, stronger and more united than ever before. But Ethan's journey wasn't just about personal success. Inspired by his own experiences, he launched an initiative called Bright Sparks, aimed at providing resources and mentorship to young inventors from disadvantaged backgrounds. Through workshops, online tutorials, and hands-on labs, Bright Sparks taught kids how to build, experiment, and innovate, using whatever materials they had available. Ethan visited schools, sharing his story and encouraging students to pursue their passions despite obstacles. One memorable visit took him to a middle school in a low-income neighborhood. As he stood in front of a group of wide-eyed children, holding up a simple robot he had built from scrap parts, Ethan smiled warmly. "This little guy might not look like much," he said, "but it represents something bigger, the power of imagination. You don't need fancy tools or expensive equipment to be an inventor. All you need is curiosity, determination, and a willingness to try." The students erupted into applause, many of them eager to ask questions or share their own ideas. One boy shyly approached Ethan after the presentation, showing him a crude contraption he had cobbled together from old batteries and wires. "Does this count as inventing?" the boy asked hesitantly. Ethan knelt down to his level, examining the device with genuine interest. "Absolutely," he replied. "Inventing isn't about perfection. It's about solving problems and learning along the way. Keep going, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Moments like these reminded Ethan why he had chosen this path, not for fame or fortune, but to inspire others to believe in themselves. His work at JPL allowed him to contribute to humanity's greatest adventures, but his true legacy lay in empowering the next generation of dreamers and creators. As years passed, Ethan's influence continued to ripple outward. Bright Sparks expanded globally, reaching thousands of children who might otherwise have gone unnoticed. Many of these young inventors went on to achieve incredible things, crediting Ethan as their role model and mentor. Meanwhile, Ethan remained a beloved figure at JPL, leading groundbreaking projects that brought humanity closer to the stars. Through it all, he carried with him the lessons he had learned, that brilliance could emerge from the most unexpected places, that resilience could overcome even the toughest challenges, and that kindness and humility were the true hallmarks of greatness. Ethan Carter's journey was far from over, but one thing was certain: he had already left an indelible mark on the world. Ethan Carter's journey reached new heights as his contributions to NASA and his advocacy for young inventors began to reshape the landscape of innovation. His name became synonymous with brilliance, resilience, and humility, a beacon of hope for countless individuals who dared to dream despite adversity. Yet what truly set Ethan apart wasn't just his technical genius or groundbreaking inventions. It was his unwavering commitment to uplifting others and proving that talent could thrive anywhere if given the chance. One of Ethan's proudest achievements came when Bright Sparks, the initiative he had launched to inspire underprivileged children, celebrated its 5th anniversary. By then, the program had grown into a global movement, reaching tens of thousands of kids across dozens of countries. Workshops were held in schools, community centers, and even makeshift classrooms in remote villages. Online platforms provided free tutorials, project ideas, and mentorship opportunities, ensuring no child felt left behind. Ethan traveled extensively, visiting participants and hearing their stories firsthand. Among the many success stories was a young girl named Sofia from Brazil. Growing up in a favela, Sofia had little access to formal education or resources. But after joining Bright Sparks, she discovered her passion for robotics. Using scrap metal and discarded electronics, she built a device that purified water using solar power, a solution desperately needed in her drought-prone region. When Ethan met Sophia at an international science fair where she showcased her invention, he was moved to tears. "You're proof that creativity has no limits," he told her. "Keep dreaming big, because the world needs people like you." Sophia's story was just one of many. From Kenya to India to Mexico, Bright Sparks alumni were making waves in fields ranging from renewable energy to healthcare technology. Each success reinforced Ethan's belief that opportunity, not privilege, was the key to unlocking human potential. He often said, "The world is full of untapped brilliance. All we need to do is provide the tools and let imagination take over." Back at JPL, Ethan continued to push boundaries. His work on Quantum Link paved the way for a new era of interstellar communication, enabling missions to venture farther than ever before. One such mission, dubbed Odyssey Beyond, aimed to send a spacecraft to Proxima Centauri, the closest star system to Earth. Equipped with Ethan's quantum-based communication system, Odyssey Beyond would transmit data back to Earth in real time, bridging the 4.2 light-year gap as if it were mere miles away. The launch of Odyssey Beyond became a historic event, watched by millions around the globe. As the countdown ticked down to zero, Ethan stood alongside Dr. Emily Torres and the rest of the JPL team, his heart pounding with excitement. When the rocket finally lifted off, piercing the sky in a blaze of fire and light, Ethan felt an overwhelming sense of pride, not just for himself, but for humanity as a whole. This mission represented more than scientific progress. It symbolized the boundless curiosity and determination that defined our species. In the months following the launch, Ethan found himself reflecting on how far he had come. The boy who once tinkered with broken appliances in a tiny apartment now stood among the brightest minds in history, contributing to projects that would shape the future of space exploration. Yet, despite all his accomplishments, he remained deeply connected to his roots. He never forgot the struggles he and his mom had endured, nor did he lose sight of the lessons those hardships had taught him. Maria, too, had found fulfillment in her own way. After years of working odd jobs to support her family, she took on a role as an outreach coordinator for Bright Sparks. Her warmth and compassion made her a natural fit for the position, allowing her to connect with parents and educators eager to nurture young talent. Together, mother and son formed a powerful duo, inspiring entire communities to believe in the power of possibility. Meanwhile, Richard Langley's attempts to repair Innovatech's damaged reputation yielded mixed results. While some of his initiatives showed promise, such as scholarships for underrepresented students and partnerships with local schools, many viewed them as too little, too late. Employees within the company grew increasingly disillusioned, frustrated. By Langley's inability to address deeper cultural issues, morale remained low, and turnover rates soared. Eventually, pressure from shareholders forced Langley to step down as CEO. In his resignation speech, he admitted to mistakes made during his tenure, though he stopped short of apologizing directly to Ethan or Maria. "Leadership requires vision, empathy, and accountability," he said. "I failed in those areas, and for that I am sorry." Whether sincere or not, his words signaled a turning point for Innovatech. A new leadership team took over, vowing to prioritize inclusivity and innovation moving forward. Though Ethan heard about Langley's departure, he chose not to dwell on it. What mattered most to him was the impact he had made, not revenge or vindication. He understood that holding on to bitterness would only weigh him down, preventing him from focusing on the brighter future ahead. Instead, he channeled his energy into continuing his work, both at JPL and through Bright Sparks. As time went on, Ethan's legacy continued to grow. Textbooks featured his inventions, documentaries chronicled his rise from obscurity to fame, and universities invited him to deliver commencement speeches. In every appearance, he emphasized the importance of perseverance, collaboration, and kindness. Success isn't measured by titles or accolades, he often said. It's measured by the lives you touch and the doors you open for others. Perhaps the greatest testament to Ethan's influence came when a young engineer named Jamal, a former participant in Bright Sparks, joined the JPL team. Jamal, who grew up in a small town with limited resources, credited Ethan with sparking his interest in science and engineering. On his first day at the lab, Jamal approached Ethan nervously, holding out a hand. "Mr. Carter, I just wanted to thank you," he said. "If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be here today." Ethan shook Jamal's hand warmly, smiling. "Don't thank me," he replied. "Thank yourself for having the courage to chase your dreams. And remember, someday someone will look up to you the way you look up to me." Pay it forward. Years later, as Ethan stood on a stage accepting yet another award, a Lifetime Achievement Honor from the International Space Exploration Consortium, he reflected on the winding road that had brought him here. From the quiet halls of Innovatech, where his curiosity had sparked controversy, to the vast reaches of space where his innovations helped humanity explore the unknown, Ethan's journey had been anything but ordinary. But through it all, he had stayed true to his values: curiosity, humility, and an unshakable belief in the goodness of people. As he concluded his acceptance speech, Ethan looked out at the audience, a sea of faces representing scientists, engineers, educators, and dreamers, and shared one final thought. We live in a world filled with challenges, yes, but also endless opportunities. No matter where you come from or what obstacles you face, never stop believing in yourself. Because somewhere out there, someone is waiting to see the light you bring to the world. With those words, Ethan stepped off the stage, greeted by thunderous applause. Though his story was far from over, one thing was certain: Ethan Carter had already changed the world, for the better and forever.